Jonathan, you found me. Give me just a minute, Jonathan, because I'm fixing some stuff that I did wrong today. My apologies. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you. You can hear me though? Okay, good. Okay. Hey, my connection seems a little better today than it did last time. Did you try to come to the meeting and it sent you to my office hours? Sorry, I'm the worst. So I redesigned that homepage to maybe be more user friendly, and in the process, I messed up all my links. Yeah, I should probably send out an announcement saying sorry, all I fixed it. Bear with me for just a minute. I think I need to go fix it in another course as well. Dang it. Oh, yeah, I did it in both classes. Did you notice the homepage being different? Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that helped, makes it any easier. I tried to clean it up some. I think it was kind of. And hey, oh, I have a question since I've got you on the line. I'm trying it differently this time because I was really dissatisfied with the Zoom quality live stream. So I'm live streaming separate from Zoom again, and I think it's going okay. Um, Geez, I hope so. I'm on my YouTube page right now. It looks like trash. Um, did you also notice for this week 4? I don't know if you watched the intro video. That sorry, that you have to work through the module like thing by thing. Are Yeah, yeah. Does that is that showing up? It's usable. Okay. Yeah. I think there were some people that were. Oh yeah, bit rate's low. There were some people who were just jumping straight to the assignment without looking at any of the videos. I feel like, and so I kind of forced the issue now. Yeah, yeah. You just like yeah. That to do list shows up too, and it's bad because it's like you need to do this, and so you click it to do it, and you're like, then you miss like 3 pages of like prep content to actually do it properly. Oh yeah, that's not great. Hey, you see my shoulder and that model and my face, right? Excellent. My It is working. All right. All right, I'm just going to carry on. Well, hopefully, actually, give me just a second to send an announcement, just to make sure. Okay, excellent. So I was just warming up with the gesture session, but I'm going to move. I just tried to say type hello when you're here on my YouTube live stream and I messed up. And so I wrote typo hell when you're here. That's not good. All right, I'm going to stop this gesture session. Yeah. All right. I was sitting here in my live stream going, where is everybody? Nobody wants to come. It was my fault. I made it impossible to get to. Oh, that's good. Good. I think I had my live stream set to unlisted as well. So it's like there was no way. I don't know even how that one happened. But anyway, hopefully I've recovered. All right. I'm going to talk about the approach this week. This week's kind of a weird week with the boxes and cylinders and stuff. Last week was kind of like trying to look flat at like the relationship of these big masses and then show which one was in front and all of that. You kind of had to break the model into abstract elliptical shapes. This time we're breaking the model up into three-dimensional shapes. And if you haven't taken beginning drawing, it can be tricky. Drawing shapes can be tricky. So I'm just going to run through them real quick, just the shapes and forms that we're going to be using in the drawing this week. And the sketchbook practice is directly related to that. So the first thing is just getting shapes and arranging them on a line and just noticing the difference. And this is kind of a recap of the video, but if I have a circle, which is going to stand in for a head, a rectangle, which is going to stand in for like ribs, and then a half circle, which is going to stand in for hips. If I orient them all straight up and down, it's very stiff and kind of very robotic. As soon as I introduce a curve relationship to them, and I don't have to have the line here for this, so that starts to feel more alive, like it's moving. If I do it without the line, right, that kind of flow is going to have it's going to feel more movementy, more organic, more alive than, say, this perfectly straight up and down one. And that becomes important in the pose because it's not to say that this is incorrect. It's just that your likelihood of making it awkward and stiff and not very nice to look at goes way up when you do this kind of straight line relationship. Then there's the S curve one. It's the same as this, just along an S curve. And it feels even more human. Like we move this way, like that zigzag accordion thing. So bearing that in mind and looking for it when you're gesturing and laying out a figure is really important. And just knowing, the relationships have an impact on how the figure reads is also important. Let's talk about the forms real quick, and then we'll just move into a figure drawing example of it. So the forms we're going to use for head is going to be a sphere. I'm going to do like brain case and face mask kind of a thing. Like that's usually enough. You could crisscross them if you want. The idea here is that this gives me automatically like this figure is looking down in this direction, right? If I just did a circle, I wouldn't know where it was looking. So that's for a head. If this one was looking away from me, directly away from me, it might be brain and face mask. But if I were to do overlapping, the brain is closer to me, right? It's looking the other direction. Some kind of directionality to the head. Cubes and rectangular shapes, they're not, I don't want you to get hung up in the perspective of them because we haven't covered perspective in this class. If you really want to dig into perspective, beginning drawing is the place for that. For our purposes, we just need to know, it's more practice visualizing, like I say pretend it's a cereal box. And what is that cereal box doing? And it can be helpful to grab. This is the wrong proportions. It's a lot fatter of a box, but just grabbing a box and noticing some things like here I am looking at just the straight square of the box. If I turn it, I start to see this side, but I can't see this side. If I turn it like this, now I can see the top and the side and the front. Like I get 3 views of it. Most of the positioning of the chest is going to be like you can see the side. Maybe you don't see top or bottom, but you see the side and the front. Or maybe you're up above and you see the side, front, and top. Maybe you're from dead on the side and you see the top and the side a little bit, right? You kind of have to imagine if I were to slice the arms off and the shoulders and stuff, what would the cereal box shape of this chest do? And I think a box makes more sense to describe a chest because we talk about like our front, our sides, our back. That's a box. We're talking about a box when we talk sides, front, and back. If you get a can, it's like, where is the front of the can? It's the front you're looking at, right? Like a cylinder shape. Where's the front of this thing? Well, it's this. And if I turn it like that, where's the front? It's still, there's no distinguishing front, back, or side. So the cylinder doesn't quite make as much sense to me to describe a chest. So what we need to know is then we just need to practice. And this is your sketchbook. It's like, here's the front side that I'm looking at. Here's this part and there's that part. I see some front, some side. Do I see top or bottom? Let's say yes. Let's say I'm looking down on this. That means from this middle line, they're going to go up. These edges here are going to go up like that. And the bottom's just going to match the same. I've already got a start on my box. Now I just need to do the back edge here, and it's going to match this. And the back edge here is going to match that. So you can see there's 3 sets, like 1, 2, 3. All 3 of those lines go the same direction. 1, 2, 3, they all go the same direction. 1, 2, 3, they all go the same direction. So if you're trying to figure out what to do with your lines, look at lines you've already got and see if you can puzzle out how to describe them. I like to put a little arch as if it's like saying, here's the rib cage. You don't have to do that. It just kind of gives it a little more human feel. The big important thing is tell us, are we looking at the front, the side, the top, the bottom? What we shouldn't get is like, right? This is like, I have no idea what's going on here. It actually looks like I'm looking inside a corner of a room, right? There's like a window here and a window there. It's a baseboard, right? It's like I'm looking into a space. So that's no good. These lines are all over the place. And then for the hips, we are going, because they're buried deep and hard to see, we're going to just deal with a half circle or a half sphere. So a sphere is like that. If I wanted to make it look even more spherical, I add these cross lines. Right? That's going to make it seem 3-dimensional. If I want to make a half sphere, I just sort of draw this lightly, ignore the top half, and just deal with this bottom half. If I'm above, then I'll see into the sphere, and it makes this sort of ellipse shape like that. That's like a spherical half sphere. If I don't, I can make the same thing here, this ellipse. If I don't see into the top of this, if I'm below the hips, and that's something you have to kind of decide pose per pose. Am I above the hips? Am I below? Then if I'm below, I firm up the top one here. All right, that's going to make it look like I'm below looking up at a half spherical object. All right, so that's going to give us the torso that we're dealing with. This already looks like a torso, just really disjointed. Arms and legs, they're just going to be cylinders. Think like soup cans or something. I would get a can or a cylinder or something. I see what, Jonathan, you got a Lysol bottle or something back there on your bed. Yeah, you can use that as an example of what happens with cylinders. Constructing a cylinder, what I would do when drawing this drawing, and you'll see me do this, is I will make a sphere. I'll have a gesture down and you'll see me do that. Make a sphere, like say if this was an arm, straight line down to the elbow, and then straight line down to the wrist. And I kind of do a hierarchy. Shoulder is a big joint that moves a lot, so it's bigger. Elbow has some movement, but not as much as a shoulder, so it's smaller. And wrist is smaller still. It makes it kind of visually pleasing. So now to build my cylinders on this, I already have the orientation here. That way and that way. So for this cylinder, I'm going to make an ellipse there and an ellipse there. You'll notice my hand is, I'm just using my shoulder to do it. If you try to make an ellipse with your fingers like this, it's going to be a weird, wonky, little oblong, bonkers shape. So that's part of this drawing from the shoulder thing. The lay-ins, the initial sketches, they work better. Hey, Kayla, thanks for the OL. They work better when you work from the shoulder, or maybe a little bit of elbow, but definitely not too much wrist. All right, so I have two ends of my cylinder down like this. I'm going to do the same for the forearm. I'm kind of imagining this like arms are bigger towards the shoulder and they taper a bit towards the elbow. Yours can be straight. It's not too big of a deal. We haven't talked proportion yet. So there would be my forearm cylinder. And then for hands, you can just do whatever paddle shape makes sense to you. I'm not worried about those being super specific. Mainly arms and legs, like the bigger parts of the body for this drawing. I still haven't decided how we're looking at this. So I have to go through each of these cylinders and decide, do I see, if I were to slice this model, would I see into the top or would I not? So this arm, if it's coming slightly towards me, like if my eyeballs are down here, then I would be able to see the bottom and I would not be able to see the top of this cylinder. Take a can and move it that way, like put your eyes in the middle of it or put your eyes below it where you're looking at the bottom. You won't be able to simultaneously look at the bottom and the top at the same time. When you look at the top, now you can't see the bottom, right? I can arrange it. This one's hard because the top isn't specific, but I'm about to fix that. If I take this thing of graphite, if I can see the top, see that ellipse, I can't see the bottom ellipse. If I can see the bottom ellipse, I can't see the top ellipse. And if I do it just right, I can make it so I can't see either of them. But in no universe, unless my eyes were far enough apart, could I see this side and this side at the same time. It can't happen, right? So that's the one main thing to recall when dealing with cylinders is I can't draw this full ellipse like I see the top there and the bottom as well. As soon as I pick which one I can see the top of, I automatically can't see the other side. So let's say my eyeballs are somewhere like down here. That means I can see that one, which means I cannot see that one. That now tells me, I just firmed that up in a way that tells me, hey, we're down below. And it didn't have to be that way. I could make us look like we were up above, but I said my eyeballs are below. That dictated what happened next. Then I'm going to firm this sphere up. That overlapping is important. It also tells me that this is in front of that. So watch out for that in your drawings as well. You need that overlapping. Same here. I'm going to let that sphere sit in front of that. So now it feels like I'm getting some spatial information. Let's say this is coming towards me. That means I can't see this one, but I can see that one. There's some overlap. This sphere I can finish off. Now I'm starting to get some information here. These straight sides are fine, but I kind of like to mimic what happens in the edges of an arm. So I'll put like a C-curve taper here. And then instead of a straight on top, I'll kind of put an S-curve like that. That's going to feel more forearm-like already, just that little C to S curve edges. And it's subtle, but we read it, and it helps it feel a little more alive as well. You don't have to do that. You can. All right, I think that's enough to get us started on the actual figure. I'm going to use this guy. All right, so if you've gotten all the materials, what I might suggest is to do your gesturing with vine charcoal. This is a piece of vine. The reason for that is when I make marks with vine charcoal, they just ghost away a lot easier. If I'm using a pencil to gesture, I need to have a really light hand because I need to build on top of that in a bunch of layers. So if you're heavy-handed or you just want some freedom at the start of your gesture, I might put the pencil aside for a minute and grab your vine charcoal to lay out your gesture. You can always bring the pencil back. In fact, I would encourage you to do that because vine charcoal is so smeary. So I'm going to start with the vine just so I can get this figure laid in dark for you to see and then ghost it away. First thing, I'm going to ignore the arms and just imagine this whole thing you see that kind of triangular shape to the overall pose. And then heck, I might just make if I imagine the arms as this kind of from shoulder to hand to elbow to shoulder, it's almost like a rectangle. So I'm abstracting the figure that I'm looking at. It's like a rectangle that's nested on a triangle. Now I'm going to go in and just start gesturing the body in. Again, proportions and measurements are not correct on this. Don't worry about them in your drawing. They don't have to be. We haven't talked about it yet. So if things are sized weirdly, it's not too big of a deal. I'm mainly concerned about, can you reduce the figure to these geometric shapes and show us what's happening spatially? Thinking about the overlaps we already learned about. Thinking about drawing boxes and cylinders the way that we have just learned how. It's like the waistband is right in the middle of this arm, so I'm already thinking about that. Knee or something. This is going to look like chaos for a bit. I'm just looking for what feels like this pose. When I'm gesturing, I kind of like to deal with the thigh and the lower leg separately almost. Like the thigh is this kind of a arc on the outside, S curve on the inside. And then the lower Then the lower part of the leg, it's like maybe there's like the kneecap area there. And then the lower part of the leg is a different thing. You can really get a leg fast if you kind of break them that way. I've got this leg way out. If I were measuring, I'd start moving stuff around because I think I've got some stuff out of whack, but I'm not going to worry about it for this drawing because I want to get to the geometric figure. All right, can I ask myself, do I have the feel of the pose? I think I've got it reasonably well. I could probably gesture around a little bit more and get some things feeling a little bit better, but I'm going to call that good. You'll notice when I do this with that vine charcoal, it kind of goes away but is still there. And that's really nice now for a pencil to be able to come in and start making clearer decisions on top of it. I'm using a medium charcoal pencil. I have it in this pencil extender. I'm going to save, I have a soft charcoal pencil here that I'll probably go in for the final line with. All right, I'm going to deal with the body first. So what do I see? The chest is going to be bonkers. I might do a test version of it over here just to make sure that I can get my head around it. But I've got head is closest thing to me, then chest, then that half sphere of the hips. It's like he's leaning towards me. So if I think back to my box, it's going to be something like, I can see his side. I can see his back, but it's because he's twisted a little bit because I can see his front too. So this is where the human body gets a little bit, you have to decide, can we see the back or the front? Which one is it? I would say since I'm looking at his front, I would favor the front. So it's almost like that. That's just about what I see. All right. And that's with my weirdly shaped box. If I had a box that was more adequately proportioned to the torso, it would look even closer to what I see. So let's see. I'm going to start. I'm not going to start with the head. As with most things in this class for figure drawing, the head kind of obeys what the rest of the body is doing. So if you start with a head, now you have to make a whole body match what you just made that head do. I much prefer to get the core in and then make the body obey the core, which is what really happens. Your arms and legs can swing all over the place, but they're attached to the core, so they can only swing so much. Head is the same. It's like a really short, stubby arm with no joints in it. I don't know. All right, so this box, I know I can see the top, so I'm going to imagine maybe like right across his collarbones or right across the chest here, the top of the box starts. This is just a stand-in for what the torso is doing. So it's not going to be perfect, but I see this tilting. If I were to slice him right along the shoulders and just remove his whole head and everything, this is kind of the cross section I might see. Let me explain a few things off to the side. So I have a couple of choices here. Here's that cross section I just did. And I'll do it twice just so we can see. Jonathan, is that too small to see or do you see it okay? Okay, thanks. All right. I can say, all right, if I look at the box that I drew before or that I, tilted and saw, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Right? And maybe that's like his rib cage there. That's perfectly fine. That tells me enough. I mean, it's not a perfectly drawn box, but it tells me, hey, you're telling me you can see the side, you can see the front, and you can see a lot of the top because he's leaning towards us. Perfect. That's totally fine. If you are a person who is familiar with drawing cubes and stuff, and you kind of have some perspective drawing knowledge or whatever, you can play with this rectangle a little bit and make it feel even more organic. And the way I would suggest doing that is look at the next. Remember, you don't have to do this, by the way. If anybody's listening, you're like, this is going to get into the weeds. Don't worry, you're fine just doing this basic box. It's going to be totally fine. If I look at where his hips are, he's twisted. There's a twist. And so I'm going to pretend I didn't draw that top one for a second and instead draw the torso like it's this and some of the side. And I'm going to ghost in this back edge. That's kind of what his torso is doing. And so now I'm just going to connect this with some S curves. That's going to give me that twist that's in his torso even better. So if you are comfortable or familiar or want to, then feel free to twist the box a little bit. Even if it's a simple bend, maybe not for this pose, but it's like, here's the torso that I found, and there's kind of this bend to it. This is the same as this one. It's just that it's got this little bendy thing going on. Feel free to play with it in that way if you feel comfortable doing so. If not, the straight box is still totally fine as well. All right, I don't want his chest to be super, super wide, so I'm going to move this edge back just a little bit and maybe move this one in just a little bit. Just because I'm thinking of a torso and it's a lot longer than it is wide, like it's taller than it is wide, and this was feeling like it's going to be really quite wide. So for better or worse, I'm going to do that. Where's the brain? And again, this isn't the whole head and the chin. It's just like, where would his brain be sitting? Maybe like that. How about the face mask? That comes all the way down, like almost to where I have the edge of this box. And if I wanted to put a center line on this, I could go like that. That gives me the orientation of his head as I see it. All right, I think I might do that bend thing just because, well, no, I'll do just a basic box for example purposes. Let's see. Ooh, I don't have those leaning nearly enough. So I'm thinking about how much these are leaning. I think it's more like this. Again, it's all three of these are matching. This one, and whatever one I bring in here are going to match. This one, and whatever one I bring down here are going to match. And that's just box drawing 101, I suppose. All right, it's still kind of a mess. I'll firm these decisions up. I'm still drawing pretty lightly. I'll firm these up with a darker pencil in a bit. Now I'm thinking about his hips region, and they're kind of facing straight at me. So this box is going to give me my twist. If I were to slice him at the hips, I'm just putting on my imagination hat and just going slice. Could I see in? I think so. I feel like my eyes are up a little bit. Like I don't feel like I'm down at his knees looking up at him. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle looking at him. So I'm going to say, yeah, you would see the top of this. I'm making it smaller intentionally because I want to leave room for the hips to be spheres. So I don't want to make this dish this half sphere huge, or else I'm going to start getting like really super wide looking hips. So I'm just imagining without the legs, like what would it's like almost underwear line briefs. If you're wearing briefs, it's like the Superman underwear line into a half sphere. I like to put this little line just to show me that it's just to give some dimension to it. You don't have to. All right, I feel like that's good for the core. Now I can just make the arms and legs obey what the core is doing. So I'm going to start with the arms. I have a shoulder that's, if I look at the chin, it's like right here. Shoulder, where's the elbow? It's just a straight shot directly down from the hips like this. So I'm kind of looking just that arrangement. I'm almost playing connect the dots here. Wrist is up here. That's one arm. And that matches up-ish with the gesture I had down already. The other arm, I can see a sphere up here. Well, I don't see a sphere. I see an imaginary sphere where that bump of the shoulder is. Where would his elbow be? It's tucked behind. It's like this. So although I am going to put it right here, I'm not going to firm it up because this chest is going to cover it later. But that's going to give me the angle to my other wrist, which I am going to put. So that's going to help me orient that cylinder when it comes time. Let's see, hips. I feel like this. The hips kind of stick straight out from the edges. So like if I do this shape again here, this is my half sphere. The hips are kind of like the way the skeletal structure of the hips work is there's like the joint of the bone kind of goes into the hip like that. And then the bone comes down like that. That's kind of the way human bodies are. It's not like you have these things that come straight out the bottom like that. That's not that maybe in cartoons. The actual bones go up at kind of an angle and then they jut up in like that. And what we're trying to represent with the spheres that we do is just this whole range of motion here. Like that big area there. And it's usually a good idea if I put this in front of the hips to just put the other one behind to give a little bit of dimension to it. Right? So in this one, what am I going to do? I'm going to have this sphere out front and this sphere behind, and it'll show up much better when I firm up the lines. So it's like the elliptical figure where it's kind of a mess, a transparent, cloudy mess right now that will resolve as I go in with that final contour. All right, where's the knee? We'll go here. And down to the ankle. Same story, big, smaller, smallest. I can't help but do these swoops for the shins. Just that C curve in the shins is really, it just screams shin. So I very often do it. All right, that's kind of my joint map core situation. Now I'm going to go in and firm up some decisions. The reason I left it light is because I have some stuff that's close to me and some stuff that's behind, and I want to do the close stuff first to make sure that I don't run into problems with my overlapping. So I think what I'm going to start with is this arm here and maybe the head. So I'm going to build the ellipses, same as before. One thing with cylinders, you want these, so if this is my whole cylinder is arranged along this line, You want the ends to be like 90 degrees to that, like perpendicular this way. And this one is also perpendicular that way. If you start taking these and going and stretching them, you start losing the sense of believable space with them. All right, forearm's going to be like this and that. I can't see the other forearm. I'm just going to imagine it. Like the other wrist is tucked behind this big gun thing. You can draw the gun as in this big rectangle in if you like, but I wouldn't stress about it too much. All right, so I have my cylinder ends in. Now I'm going to go in and do the arm. If I look at the back of this arm, it's a very obvious C curve. So you could do a straight line, but I can't help it. I gotta do the C curve. My ellipse ends are still parallel to each other, but I'm just adding that swoop in just so it feels a little bit more, oh, human. Little S curve on the front there. All right, I need to ask myself, what am I seeing? Like, is this coming towards me? If I were to slice his arm, could I see into the top? And I'm going to say, you know what? This arm is kind of going backwards. Like, part of me wants to say, no, you can't see the top, and yes, you can see the bottom. But I don't actually think that's correct. If I look at him, his arm is going away from me. So I think I would not be able to see in right there. And I think I would be able to see in here. Like that, it's like a can tilted towards me like this, which means I could see that whole shoulder. And there's nothing else in front of this shoulder, so I feel fine making that firm decision there. Now I ran into a tiny bit of trouble here because I made the top of that just a little bit too bold, like the top of that ellipse is interfering. If I wanted to, and if you want to, you can come back and just remind us that this is out front. Just a tiny bit of eraser just to pop up that line that was a little too bold. Don't go crazy with it, it's not necessary, but. So now I feel like if I sliced his forearm, I would see into this end, and I definitely wouldn't see into that back end. It's pointing pretty drastically away from me. So no and yes. But I'm going to leave space for this elbow joint to be first so I don't run into the same problem I just had. So that's what that elbow looks like it's doing. It's going down and away from me. He's got, if you look at the metal gun part, he's got a really prominent S curve right there. I can't help myself. As I said, I got to do it. And there's also an S curve on the back as well. Slightly different shape maybe. That's just going to feel so much more human. Again, yours can be straight. It's not a big deal, but I can't help myself. And I'm just going to turn the hand into a box. So box with a chunk sticking out. Don't worry about making this dimensional or anything like that. It's really just a box with another box sitting on it. All right, I'm going to step back one layer. Actually, I'm going to do the head as well real quick because it's out in front of the chest. Just going to firm that up. Now this box, so this back shoulder, I was going to start working on this arm, but it's behind this torso. So I'm going to flesh my box out right now. Make sure my box doesn't have anything in front of it that I haven't already dealt with. Face, arms. All right, onto the box. This is that arch that I put in. You can also just go straight along it. Either way is fine. All right, now I can move back here and go, okay, shoulders like this. I don't see the cylinder that goes back. It's blocked. All right, there's upper body. Let's deal with lower body. I said that this hip was out front, so I'm just going to remind myself that. I need to build my cylinders first, though. So let's see this leg. I make these ellipses close to the spheres to make sure they intersect, so I get that overlapping. If we remember the ellipses, if they weren't intersecting, then they weren't overlapping. Same story here. If I want to show spatial anything, I need some overlap. So if I drew this ellipse down away from the sphere, it introduces question like what's in front of what? We don't really know. There's no way to tell us. So get them to intersect. Same with the knee. Again, I'm keeping track of these cylinders, making sure the ends are parallel. What's the foot? Well, this is where I get into gesture territory. It's kind of just a boxy thing, sort of nondescript paddle or something. In an effort to get you to not stress about drawing a specific foot. We will get to that later. Let's see. I feel like this leg is a little bit shorter certainly than I see in the image. I'm just going to roll with it for time. And we're not super concerned in this drawing about proportions. Same story with this foot. It's just a paddle. All right, I have my ellipse ends in, and now I need to do some deciding on what's going on. If I think just about the thigh, I kind of like do a slice thing. Like if I slice the thigh, what would happen? This one, it's like I wouldn't see, if I'm imagining, if I sliced him at the knee, I don't think I would see in from the bottom. His leg's kind of coming straight down. If I sliced him at the hip, I kind of also don't think I would see. I think maybe relative to his leg, I think my eyeballs are kind of in the middle of this so that I can't see the top or the bottom, which is something that's fine. You remember with the can, I could set it so I don't see the top or bottom. I just can't set it so I can see both. I'm going to trim this down a little bit. So that means that's kind of the situation there. And then I'm saying that's the situation there. So I'm closing off the top and the bottom. I'm thinning this one up a little bit because I feel like I had it quite wide. With thighs, I can't help myself. It's C-curve on the outside. S-curve on the inside. It's just going to feel more thigh-like. The calf section is definitely going away from me slightly, though, so I know the knee is in front. I would be able to see into the top here, but not the bottom. Closing that one off. I feel like the same thing is happening with this leg. Can't see into the top. Can't see into the bottom either. Remembering that that hip joint is behind. And then I'm just going to let that foot, if your feet are like this, they're just basic, even gestural things, it's going to be fine for this drawing. Same with the hands. What we're looking for is just a decision-making process between what these three-dimensional things would be doing. And if you find that some lines are like being a little too strong, like maybe that one, don't aim to be super clean. You don't really need to clean things up a ton. Just clean it up a little bit. That's really only if you think something is overwhelming, right? That clears up what my decision was there, to just clean up some of these ghost lines. All right. I think that's going to do it. What are we at? Oh, we're at 11 after. I need to check with the other class and make sure my links, that I actually fixed that link. So that gives you an idea of the process for finding a geometric figure within an actual figure. And if you're not familiar with three-dimensional drawing, I would practice those forms in your sketchbook and slow down. You saw me moving pretty quick because I'm relatively familiar with it. And I was making some questionable decisions, but pick a pose you're excited about that you feel like it's going to be doable. Slow yourself down and make sure you're being deliberate with each piece of the figure that you're drawing. Nothing is your worst enemy like rushing through and just being like, I can't be spending an hour on this. Rush, rush, rush. It's going to be bad news. All right. So if you're in figure, then that does it. I'll see you next Thursday. If you're in beginning, I need to double check my Zoom link and make sure that I'm sharing it properly. I knew I was going to mess something up. I'm like, let's make it easier. Always a problem. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, see you, Jonathan. Bye. All right, YouTube people, I'll answer questions if you have any. Otherwise, I'm just going to wait until I get or if you're in YouTube, well, I'll probably wait for another few minutes to see if anybody from beginning drawing comes. Otherwise, we're just hanging out. Oh, one question I do have that you could put in the YouTube chat if someone is so inclined who is watching. Kayla, maybe you're still watching. Was it choppy this time, or did this seem to work as far as the stream being relatively clear and not having the same hiccups and stuff that we had last time? So I keep trying different things and I never can be sure if the thing I'm going to try next is actually the thing that's going to work well. Oh, hey, Esmeralda. Esmeralda, did you just get here? Okay. Will you just let me know as we move along whether it's choppy or clear? I'm trying, each week I'm trying something new. I'm hoping to land on something that works best. I think I finally got it somewhat figured out, but I need some feedback to make sure I'm not just echo chambering myself. Excellent. Connection seems okay. We got some, now you can tell how much delay there is between when I see your comments and I actually ask the question. There's a significant delay, but that's okay. We can deal with it. All right, so for beginning drawing, we need to hit on measuring. So that's the thing that we're talking about this week, is that proportional measuring. And for this, I'm just going to use, today I'm going to use my water bottle as an example. I have the image of it there for you so you can remember what it is that I'm going to be drawing. I just have it set on my table here, and I'm going to use it to help me draw. It's going to be my reference. Put it where I can actually see it. Okay, so hopefully you've watched the video about measuring proportions. And if you're in figure class, this is kind of a preview of what you guys are going to be doing next week. No, 2 weeks from now. Yeah, next week we're on something different. So here's a preview of something we're going to be doing in the future, which is using our pencil to take measurements or using a bamboo skewer or knitting needle or something like that to compare measurements in the drawing and correct ourselves when we make something the wrong size. This is the bamboo skewer that I use. I prefer knitting needles, but every time I get one, I lose it. And it's a nice, perfectly straight piece of aluminum, and I can hold on to a bamboo skewer for 5 years, but I get a knitting needle and it just ghosts. It disappears. I don't know what the deal is. The mechanics of measuring. So the thing we need to remember about measuring is, one, how to do it, and then two, what we are looking for. So what good is this stick to us? Well, it's super helpful for several things, and I'm just going to recap them. If you've watched the video, then this is going to be recap. If you haven't watched the video, go watch it because I think it'll be clearer, or at least you can re-watch it several times to make sure you get what the deal is. But there are essentially 3 things that we can do with this stick to help us in our drawing. Let me draw just a nondescript object. Doesn't matter what it is. There are some things that we can decide about this object using our stick. One is we can measure distances, and this is kind of probably the hardest thing to do with the stick. So I like to hit it first because it's the thing to practice. And that's to be able to take a measurement and measure distance with your stick, you need to imagine that one end of that stick is like the start of your tape measure, and your thumb or your finger is the other part of your tape measure. And what you want to be able to do is line up one end of your tape measure with one thing, so maybe this edge right there, and move this one until you get the size. So that is exactly how wide that part of the drawing is. If I wanted to recreate that next to it, I could just transfer, boom, boom, that'd be the exact size that I have over here. Right, I'm just taking a measurement. Let's look at that top-wise. I put the point on one end and I move my thumb until it hits the other end. That's the size, that's the height of that thing. The trick and the thing that makes this so helpful is that I was doing this right against the drawing. So if I go, let me do a measurement. Well, let me explain this first. I can do it right against the drawing, or I can do it a ways away from the drawing. So here I am closer to the camera. I can make that same measurement right there. It's a different size now, but I still took that measurement. That's how wide it looks from the viewpoint of the camera, from where you're sitting. That's how wide it looks, right? That's helpful to me because now I can measure something that's 15 feet away and have the record of it here on this stick. So let me just say, from where I'm standing, from where I'm sitting, the height of my water bottle. I'm going to lock my elbow. It's super important that you lock your elbow. I'll explain why in just a minute if you haven't watched the video. With a locked elbow, this is how tall my water bottle is from where I'm sitting. That's how tall it appears. All right. So I took that from a ways away and I had a measurement here on my stick. Now, the important thing for us is that you can't just take that measurement and bring it to your paper. You can, but you're going to be stuck drawing at a very specific size, which is the size that thing appears to you from where you're sitting. So if I did, I don't know, a hook from across the room and I took that measurement, it's this big. That's tiny. That means I'm going to be drawing that hook at like a 1/4 inch tall. I don't want to draw that hook at a 1/4 inch tall. I want it bigger. So you can't, this is the thing to remember, you can't just take the measurement and bring it to your page. That's not for this class. The only thing you can do is compare and bring the comparison to your page. So this is what comparing looks like. I take the width of this thing right here. That's 1. I say this is my unit of measurement, 1. How does that compare to the height of this thing if I were to turn it vertically? So there's my measurement. I go once, make a note of where that tip is, move the bottom up there. That's twice. Make a note of where that tip is. 2.5. So the ratio here, the comparison is 1 width right there goes once, twice, and a half into the height. The nice thing about that is if I do it from back a ways, even if I'm back here, that same thing's going to happen. Once goes once, twice, and a half, even though I'm far away from the page, right? The ratio came with me. This could be on the other side of the room, and if I measured it, it would go one of these widths goes 2.5 times into the height. That's why it's really important to lock your elbow, because if my elbow's not locked, watch what I can do. I can go 1 width is the same as 1 height. So this thing is the same width as it is tall, but you can see that's totally not true. So don't ever let your hand do this. Don't let your elbow be bent. It needs to be out, elbow locked, preferably head tilted towards your shoulder, so you're always the same distance away. If this is overwhelming and you're like, this is bonkers, don't worry about it, because it takes practice. Practice. But you should, at the end of this week, you should be able to take a measurement and compare it to some other part of the thing that you're measuring. And it's the comparison that's important. So that's one thing we can do. It's distances. And you'll see me doing that through the example drawing. I'll point it out each time that I'm doing it. The next thing that we can do is we can measure we can compare horizontal and vertical information just by holding this thing vertically in front of us. So for instance, if I hold the vertical up right here, I can see that this bump is lined up almost with that little section there. That's just comparing vertically. If I can do the same thing horizontally. This little dip, if I go horizontal, happens right kind of horizontally aligned to the middle of this curve. Those comparisons can actually go a long way towards making sure you don't get things stretched out and weird feeling. So always keep in mind, like, what's my vertical, what's my horizontal doing? That's probably the easiest thing. And I think between distance measuring and vertical and horizontal, it's a toss-up on which is more helpful. They're both really helpful. As far as easy is concerned, vertical horizontal is easy because you don't have to worry about comparing. A vertical you can measure in front of you and bring right down to your page because it's just vertical. You don't care about distance. Size doesn't matter. It's just the vertical relationship. So verticals and horizontals. And then another one is angles. So I can measure the angle between this point and that point. If I imagine that on a clock, it's like 1 o'clock, maybe a little less. The angle between this point and that, it's like 10 o'clock or something. It's this angle. So those angles also will help you. So those are the 3 things to recall. And again, watch the video, watch it 3 times, watch it 10 times. Measuring distances, checking verticals and horizontals, and checking angles are the 3 main things that we're focusing on in this drawing. All right, my drawing is going to be my water bottle, but yours might be... Water bottle seems easy, but it's symmetrical, which is something we're going to get into in a coming week, symmetrical objects. There's a specific way to construct them that's way more effective. You might pick something that's not symmetrical, not like a bottle. I would encourage it. Something else. Hair dryer, maybe. is it like a, I don't know, laundry detergent container? As long as it's not just a plain old rectangle, don't do like a TV. You're going to pick, and that's for the sketchbook thing. For the actual drawing, you're going to pick several objects. So give us a sense of who you are, pick several objects, and just make sure they relate to each other with these measuring techniques. All right, so my bottle's over here. I'm going to use it as my reference. And I'm going to draw it bigger, larger than life. Oh, I'm using vine charcoal to gesture here because it goes away really easily. If you don't have vine charcoal, you can gesture with your charcoal pencil. Just keep it light. And in fact, I'll just gesture with my charcoal pencil just so we're on the same page. Basically just a big rectangle. I mean, it's kind of the lid is pretty interesting, so that's probably where I'll focus a lot of my attention. All right, that's my gesture. Within about 1 minute or so, I have an idea of where it's going to sit on the page. That's important, so I know I've got a little space at the bottom of the page, little space at the top of the page. I've got it kind of filling up my page nicely. All right, now I need to start measuring. I'm going to start with big stuff first. So I'm going to say there's a width here. If I take that width like this and do what I did on this blob thing, how many times does the width go into the height? Right? So my drawing, it's like, I've got a ton of lines here, so it's hard to know exactly where. I'm going to say there-ish. Once, twice, almost three times. Well, let's see how that compares to my actual bottle as I look at it. So right now I'm sticking this out in front of me, elbow locked. In fact, I wonder if I could. Yeah, oh, we got an infinity thing going on. So I'm going like this. One width goes once, twice, three. Oh, so I was using the camera there. It's about 3 is what it looked like to me. Let me do it without the camera confusing me and make sure. So I might have mine on the page a little too squat. Width is 1, and it goes 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. So I'm 3 plus a little bit. Let me double check. 1, 2, 3. 3 and a little bit. That's what I get. So 3 and a little bit is my magic number. I need to ask myself now, I don't have 3 and a little bit here. I have 2, almost 3. So that tells me my bottle needs to be taller, or my bottle needs to be thinner. And I have to decide which of those is going to be the appropriate answer. So if I make my bottle thinner, I can keep it the same size height-wise on the page and still get my 3 and a little bit. And I think for this drawing, that's what I want to do because I like where it ends here at the bottom. I don't want it to grow this way. And I don't want it to grow that way either. So I'm happy to shrink it just a little bit this way so I can still get my 3 and a little bit. So here's what that's going to look like. I'm going to say tick mark there. That's going to be the bottom of my bottle. Now I need some width that's going to go 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. And I can just do that now before doing anything else. I can just go, how's this one? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, and a little bit, maybe just a little bit less. 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. That's almost exactly what I saw when I went up there. So when I checked the width of the bottle, it went 1, 2, 3, and had a little bit left over, just like I see here. So that tells me, I'm bringing the comparison 3 in a little bit. That tells me that this, since it goes 1, 2, 3, and a little bit, this is the appropriate width of my bottle. That means I can just like wherever feels good in here, I can say, you know what, let's go there. So that's going to be tick mark there, tick mark there. That's the width of my bottle. Here I'm drawing from the shoulder to kind of get my bottle laid out. Just do one more time. 1, 2, 3, and a little bit. All right, so that's my overall proportions of my bottle. I still have a bunch of lines here. I still haven't settled on my final edge there, but I kind of have the overall bottle figured out. I'm not done. I still need to figure out, so I'm kind of done down here because it's just a cylinder. I don't really have to worry too much about it down in the lower portion. But mine has water in it, so I have a water level in here somewhere. And the top is kind of interesting. I need to figure out how tall, like where does the bottle lid meet with the bottle itself? Somewhere in here, but I'm still not sure entirely where. Well, I'm going to use this comparison again. Like there's my width, and I trust it now because I measured it. So now I can say, well, if I go from the top of my lid, which I'm saying is right here, down to where my lid meets the bottle, which I still don't know how far that is, how does it compare to the width of my bottle? Let me take a measurement and find out. I'll spare you swinging the camera again, but if I take the height of my bottle to there, to that point as I see it, there's a little bit that bumps up from there and a handle that juts out because the one I'm looking at is reversed a little bit. If I go from here down, it goes 1 1/3. One of those is 1 1/3. So when I took the height of that bottle lid and turned it sideways, my pencil it didn't go all the way across. It came to about here, right? It was like 1 1/3 of the way to the tip. So that's what I ended up with. I'm going to double check that again. You can never, it's like measure 10 times so you don't mess up. 1 1/3. Yeah, so it's like just about like that. So that's where the lid of my bottle seems to connect to my bottle based on what I was measuring. Right, it's the seam where the plastic of part of the bottle, where if you unscrewed it, that's where it would break apart. All right, I'm going to draw out the bottom part of this bottle because there's not much there. Although I do have a water level. Let me see where my water level's at. It's somewhere in the middle, so I'm going to see like if I measured there, is it exactly the same? Is it exactly in half? I'm not sure yet. Let's find out. Water level 1. Oh no, it goes halfway up into the... So when I measured my water level, it went once, twice, put it right up into the center of this, like there. And again, it's a water level, so it doesn't really matter. You can put it wherever you want, but if I'm trying to be accurate, that's about where it was. All right, without digging into the specifics of drawing symmetrical objects, which we're going to get to, suffice it to say, anything like a water level or a label or a stripe on a cylinder or round thing is going to turn into this elliptical shape. Same goes for the bottom. Same goes for the top. All right, so this is my water level inside my bottle. There's a bit of a taper like that. It's really important to get this arch down here. I know that the bottom of my water bottle is flat, but I don't see it as flat because it's round. It has this rounded bottom. It's a cylinder. It's like a can or something. The bottom has to be round. If I made the bottom perfectly flat, it wouldn't look substantial, like it's taking up space the way it's supposed to. There's the water level in my bottle. So I feel pretty good about these. I measured these out. I'm feeling pretty good. Here's where the cap meets. Now, so relatively there. Now I've got some serious work to do on this lid because there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the lid. Mine is split. Mine is quite similar to the one that I have up on the screen, but it's a little bit different. And since I'm looking at it from a different angle, I have a lot more interesting stuff going on. I have there's like a rubber ring that goes across right here. So I just need to know at what height does the ring stop and it starts into something else. Hopefully this gives you an idea of what the drawing process is like, by the way. If you're used to just drawing from the hip where you're just like, there's a bottle, blah, 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 good enough. I've spent however long, I'm dissecting this bottle. I'm trying to find the relationships in the bottle. I'm trying to think about the bottle. I'm trying to notice things about the bottle that might go unnoticed because it's my job as the artist to show people what they overlook or to understand a thing more intimately than just a passing glance would give you, or like, a thing is there, but the artist, like you focus on it, you bring it to our attention, you pay it, even though it's boring and mundane, you pay attention to it. Right? I guess that's maybe artists pay attention. All right, so where does that rubber ring start? I'm going to measure, since I feel confident about the top line here, I already measured that, and I feel confident about this, and I feel confident about this whole thing relating to the whole bottle. This is my little zone of comfort now. Like I know that rectangle is good, so I can compare things within it. So that question I'm going to ask myself, if I look at that ring, it goes like, yay. How many of those rings until I get to the top of that bottle? There's one, two. Oh, that's nice. It's nice when it works out. So it's exactly 2 rings width to get to this top line. So I just need to find something that goes, if I take the ring as my 1, then it goes above that once, twice. So 1, and it goes once, twice. I'm a tiny bit tall. 1, once, twice, tiny bit short. 1, still a bit tall. It's pretty close right here. All right, so that's the height of my ring, and just like everything else on this bottle, except for when I get to these top bits, the ring goes around the bottle, so it's going to match more or less this arc that's below it, because I want to make it look like it's going around. You could pick an object that's not perfectly cylindrical and not have to worry about this. This is getting a bit into perspective, a bit into drawing symmetrical objects. If you want to make it easier on yourself, pick a bag or a shoe, or pick objects that aren't so manufactured, so perfect in their manufacturing. So there's that rubber ring. It says Contigo on it, but I'll be a son of a gun if I actually write the word Contigo in letters. Don't ever draw. I don't want to say don't ever, but don't just write the word like that. If you're drawing, draw the word. Right? Like what's happening as I look at it, I'm noticing like I see a dark mark here and a dark mark there. Then I've got another dark mark here and there. This one goes up a little bit. Then I have a dark mark there and two like that. Then I have dark mark with the longer one there and a swoop. This is turning into Conti, right? Your brain is doing that. I'm just drawing lines. I'm just drawing dark things that I see. But I'm being consistent. That's all we need to read Contigo. I didn't write a single word there. I guess maybe an I if you count that as an I, but this is a drawing of the word Contigo rather than just writing it in. And if I were to write this in, I would wait till later to do it because I don't want to. That's details, right? I'm still worrying about structure. I'm still worrying about the form, the thing itself, rather than the surface texture stuff. All right. On this side, there's a little lever button that stops the button from being pressed, and there's a button here. How far in do they come? Let me take a measurement. If I take the width of those together, they're the same as the height. So they come in, the height of this ring is how far in the buttons come. And that's really helpful when you get one-to-one like that. There's that little switch. The button kind of comes in a little bit. How much? Oh, it's almost exactly half. So there to there. The button sticks out a little bit. Now I'm getting to stuff that's not part of the roundness so much. I'm getting to the handle and stuff. In fact, speaking of handles, let me draw this in. It swoops up. It seems to me to come along here, and then it swoops up, but still has kind of a curve to it. It's almost like I just continued this and then a slight little angle change up into the handle. That's part of the design of this water bottle. The handle is a particular size. I don't know what size yet. I need to measure it and I need to compare it to something else. So I'm going to go with this rectangle again. Remember, this is where the rubber seal, or like the rubber grommet of the lid, meets the actual bottle. And that's the top of my whole water bottle lid. So how does the height of this, the width of this way compare to that rectangle? Let me check it. It's exactly half. So one, 2, maybe a little bigger, 1, 2. So if I split this rectangle perfectly in half, that's the width of my water bottle lid handle. I might check how wide this is. So if I go from this edge to that little angle right there, right now I have it going almost all the way to the top there. If I check that here, a little bit less. I think I swung out really wide here. In fact, I'm going to measure that again. It's like this. Yeah, so this needs to come in about right there. So this is all garbage. That's the actual line. All right, there's a little spout here on mine. If I take a vertical alignment right off of the end of my spout, it's like this. If I measure it, it doesn't line up with the outer edge. It's inset just a little bit. So I'm going to make sure I get that in my drawing as well. This spout happens away from the edge here. How wide is it overall? Ooh, it's the same as this. Boom, boom. I'm always looking for sames. So if I trust this and I'm like, I trust that width, when I measure it and compare it to the spout, it's roughly the same. Maybe just a little bit wider, but those 1-to-1s, those are really helpful. My spout ends somewhere down here. I could measure it, or I could just take a horizontal and see how it compares to over here. Horizontally, it goes right about here. So that's roughly where my spout ends. There's a little carabiner track here, like a little clip. There's something weird happening up in here that if you're not used to, it gets a little tricky. So I'm going to hit that in just a minute. I noticed there's a round part here that heads back to the spout, and I think it follows the curve of the bottle. And then there's a straight part here that's kind of carved into the top. It's like a flat part on top. This bumps up. I feel a little more comfortable now drawing these things in almost not freehand, but yeah, kind of freehand. Because I've measured the size of this little flapper, I kind of feel pretty confident drawing it in observationally from this point because I already measured the proportions of it, the height, the width, where it was. So I feel a lot more confident drawing it in. All right, what's happening back here? So this is part of a strap that goes up and back around. So it's almost like a piece of ribbon, like if I... There's this crossover happening right there. And that crossover is really important because it's going to give us dimension, right? That little crossover. If I didn't catch that and just went like this, that's going to flatten things out pretty badly, right? So I need to make sure I have that crossover because that's going to give us that sense of dimension. All right. So I got it started here. So here's the outside of that thing. Then somewhere down in here, there's going to be a second half of it. Another flat spot I notice. All right, so I've gone kind of dark here on this. This is my water bottle, by the way. The view I had it in was kind of like something like that. I still have kind of foggy lines here, so I'm going to do just a little bit of cleanup because I want to make sure it has kind of a cleaner look to it. I don't want it to look too sketchy. So I'm going to take my kneaded eraser like this and just mush it up. Turn it into a cylindrical shape like that. And just kind of roll it around. You can see it kind of taking some of that foggy line away. It is depositing some charcoal on the page. If you have graphite, it'll do this less, and if you have a cleaner kneaded eraser, it'll do it less. But that stuff is easy. It comes up really cleanly. What I'm focused on right now is just getting some of this heavy line out of the picture. If I swipe, it'll smear the drawing. If you do too much swiping with your eraser, it gets messy really quickly in a way that's hard to come back from. If you do this rolling thing, it's messy, but it's easy to come back from. All right, and I could go about cleaning like these incidental smudges off my page, but to be honest, I don't. They're not going to bug me. If you have them on your page, as long as they're not just horrendous, it's not going to bug me either. All right, I have an extra soft charcoal pencil now. My work is all done for the most part, except for that my lines are kind of, there's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to them. They're just kind of structural lines. If I want to bump the interest on this drawing, I can come back in and do it in the line work. And what I'm going to be thinking right now is, okay, can I get a nice varied line? And where would I do it? I want to draw attention, back in there. I want to draw attention to where the lid meets the bottle as like a spot that separates. So I'm going to make this line just a little bolder and a little more important. And I might even come in here and just like dress the edge up just a little bit. Break that lid. What's going on? dress that edge up just a little bit so it kind of provides some separation. Edge of the bottle, I'm not too worried about. Water level, I'm not too worried about. I might just leave it. There's some interesting stuff that happens with water in bottles. We'll get to that at the end of the semester, but there's all kinds of light refraction, all kinds of cool stuff that happens in there. For now, I'm just going to let it be that simple ellipse to mark the center, or ellipse to mark the level of the water, rather. The bottom here, it sits on the table, so I definitely want to a line that hints at shadow. And I might just add a little something on the corner there, just to make it more interesting. All right, now most of my work is going to be up here in this lid. So this lid is casting a shadow underneath itself. I've got chunks of glue or something in my charcoal pencil. If you hit chunks of weird stuff in your charcoal pencil, I would highly encourage that you just sharpen it past those chunks. Usually they only happen for a second, unless you just got horrible luck with a pencil. Oh, it's 12:02. I'll wrap this up just with this line, a little bit of these lines, just so we can. This is a little carabiner buckle, so I'm going to sort of offset things a little bit, just imagining that it's not a perfect joint. There's ridges and stuff up here, but I'm not going to draw them in very strong because they're like changes in the bottle itself. They're not actual edges. So I don't really want them to look important like edges. Not like that back bottom edge is a proper actual edge. Kind of want that overlap there. This top edge is facing the light source, so I might make some space just to do a little delicate line there. This is an edge here, so I'm going to put it in. By edge, I mean like I can see that there's a shelf here that kind of goes behind. It's not like this front line here is just like a change in the angle. This line here is like a proper edge, like it's something's behind it that I don't see. I'm going to keep it light though because it's facing up. It's at this point that I might come in and go, okay, there's some dark shapes here. Right, that's my Contigo logo, and maybe smear it just a little bit and give it just a little. Don't let me get carried away. Little hits of light opposite the shadow spots. And don't get hung up in that. Then maybe as a final thing to separate the water level from the rest of the bottle, just a gentle pass. Right, so that's an object drawn using these measuring techniques. Hopefully that you find that helpful. What I would caution you against in this drawing is that tendency to rush. So it's really tempting to just go rushing through and to try and do like 1 hour. I just spent 1 hour doing one bottle. You don't have to go as in depth as, well, I'd go as in depth as you can manage. Right? But yeah, so that's it. Measuring proportions. Leave your tick marks. Like, see these lines? There's still measurement lines sort of sticking out different places. Totally fine. You can still see my original tick marks where I started my measurements. That original rectangle for measuring the size of this thing. Leave all of that stuff in your drawing. It's going to show me that you were doing this process. Right, and then it's going to be important in weeks coming up, in the next couple of weeks too. We're going to start dealing with symmetry and drawing proportional objects and stuff. You want to be able to lay in lines and map stuff out this way rather than just drawing from the hip. This is more constructing a drawing, and it's going to give you this kind of attention paid to the objects, and practice is going to give you a much more of a sense of substantial dimension, and they're going to be more compelling observational drawings. All right, that does it, y'all. I'm going to go get some lunch. Don't hesitate to message me if you have any questions. I apologize for the link being broken today. I tried to redesign the homepage in a way that was more visually pleasing, and the reward that I got was that I messed up all of my links. So hopefully I fixed them. I think I fixed them. And good luck. Does anybody, any questions before we sign off completely? I'll take silence as a no, so don't worry about it. All right. All right, YouTube folks. And now, so with this setup, I can have people on Zoom without having them on the YouTube. So I'm going to, yeah, don't worry, Esmeralda, I'll wait. I'm going to have the YouTube video up so the live streams can stay up on YouTube. I've been hiding them after a bit so that, you know, videos of my students aren't out published for everyone to see. But for these ones, I'll leave them up so you can rewatch if you're interested. It'll just be available to you. Esmeralda, do you have a question? You could hop into the Zoom too if you want. If you want faster back and forth. Otherwise, I'm happy to just answer your questions in the YouTube chat as well. Don't worry about that, Esmeralda. It doesn't have to be 12 inches exactly tall or wide. The idea there was that you're not trying to draw, I'm going to draw this really tiny thing, and you end up drawing this really tiny drawing, and it's really hard to take measurements of. This water bottle is big enough that I can actually measure it in a way that's easy to handle. All right, so something about a foot tall on your desk in front of you is going to be good for this measuring technique. If it's too small, super hard to measure. If it's too big and too close to you, also super hard to measure. So that's just a guidelines for the relative size of the object. Hopefully that helps. Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, and if you so you are in charge of the size of that object. So I could take something that's 24 inches tall and draw it on my page at half that size and still use these measuring techniques just fine and make it fit the page. It's about the proportions and the ratios, not the exact true size of the thing. All right, sounds good. If there's no other questions from the YouTube, it looks like Zoom. I'm going to shut Zoom down because Zoom people have left. And this is going to be last call for questions from the YouTube folks. Thanks, Esmeralda. You too. We'll see you later. All right, signing off.